Yeah.
And we'll see Icon and we'll see score later into the tournament. But let's go back to Fofo and the rest of his team, J-Team, who are going to be fighting Samsung for our first match of the day. Now, it seems a little bit weighted, I would say, to one side being Samsung. But how are they going to win this if they do, Raz?
And you can see the Samsung lineup up on your screen. The thing about J-Team is that their early game is fantastic on the domestic side of things. So having this kind of a matchup, we have a strong early game versus a much more patient team in Samsung. It can tell you how the LMS region is going to fare so far. So I think this is a decent matchup. If they can have a strong, let's say, if Fofo can hold his own versus Crown, or if Alex can showcase, because this is going to be his first international tournament, that he can go up against, let's say, the ambitions here, or maybe a little later on if Samsung come up with a different jungler, that he can hold his own.
But that's the scary thing for me, is we look across at J-Team's roster, so it's Morning, Alex, Fofo, BB, and Jay there anchoring in the support position, is that the LMS has such long, extended lane phase. These towers aren't falling until, 11, 12, 15 minutes in the game. And if you're isolating yourself that long in lane kingdom across from the likes of someone like Crown, it doesn't matter how good Fofo is. That's a nightmare.
That's the thing about it. That's why I'm interested in this, is because Samsung as a team, they'll play this a little bit drawn out. So with how J-Team look to prioritize experience and goal towards Alex, get those defensive wards on the bottom sides to protect Krugs, like just the small points in the early game, if we can see Ambition falling behind, that can open up a lot of avenues for the team of J-Team.
And there's certainly a possibility of that. The featured matchup we had on the screen there was between the top laners, Cuvée and Morning, and it's a very interesting one because Cuvée, rather than Crown, has been the solo laner to look at from Samsung. He's really beefed up his champion pool. He's added the Kled. That's a new pick for him this season. He's picking for lane, and Ambition is best as a jungler when he's playing around winning lanes. Most junglers are probably like that, but it feels like Ambition's performance really does oscillate the most depending on how strong his lanes are. He can gank well in the early game. If he misses that phase, he does rely on his lanes, and it feels like Cuvée, rather than Crown, is who he's most likely to play around in the current meta.
Yeah, that's going to be a little bit frightening, just simply because if we were to talk about one stat, which is my favorite stat, the first blood victim rate.
Is it solo deaths?
Oh, the victim rate is that Morning does find himself being the victim of first bloods 33% of the time. So that's pretty hefty. That just showcases that even though their early game is strong, he's a little bit reckless in how he looks to push up his lane if he does have a pushing advantage.
I mean, in my examination of Morning as I've been watching through J-Team, he rocks into a lane looking to kill the lane rather than looking to win the lane. And that can be incredibly dangerous if Cuvée is going off, especially if he has Ambition in his back pocket, because Alex does not spend a lot of time with Morning. He's more so about Fofo.
And then if you just think about the J-Team as a whole, watching VODs, speaking to analysts, and we've talked about it as well, Raz, if they don't get that big lead in the early game, their mid-game transitions in team fighting can let them down pretty frequently. Even on the local stage, Samsung have always transitioned well into the late game. Their team fighting has always been pretty flawless. So it kind of has to happen through big snowball, probably even Fofo snowball early in the game.
And if you had to put a number on it, how would you weight this game in terms of percentages?
Ooh, this is when I start to get a little bit sweaty. I'd give it a 30% chance to J-Team. And that seems big, honestly, just because Samsung is debatably like the best team in Korea. And so for this matchup to happen, even though J-Team have such a great early game, and they have the theory, the map, the blueprint to mid-game and late game, they don't execute it on too well.
I just don't think that the LMS has trained J-Team well enough, and they don't have the international experience that someone like AHQ or Flash Wolves do to kind of, refocus. This can't be just a lane, 15-minute lane phase game. In the first two jungle rotations, Ambition will run away with the map.
Yeah.
I mean, both teams coming off a loss, perhaps a bit more of a stark loss for J-Team against the Flash Wolves, even though it was a huge surprise for Samsung Galaxy to lose to the Rocks Tigers. If I had to choose numbers, and we're early in the tournament, hope springs eternal at this point, I still wouldn't give J-Team much more than a 10% chance. So early game snowball, maybe. Otherwise, I think it has to be
It does seem like there is a good chance of them imploding here, but there is still a chance for us.
Sure.
My big thing, though, is that kind of talking to J-Team and talking to a lot of the LMS experts behind scenes, there is teams like Machi going into this where they're just trying to learn. They're just trying to get experience. J-Team are here to cut their teeth, to prove themselves internationally. So we should see their best foot forward, and we should grade them accordingly.
Yeah, and I think the first game is always going to be the most important just because it showcases what strategy are they coming in with. Is it going to be a meta strategy? Are we going to be seeing something other than the Jarvan and Renekton from Morning? I want to see how he plays, because if he's not putting his best foot forward, if he's falling behind early on, that will kind of tell the tale of the rest of the match.
And the research here, the pick and ban is always so interesting. We're playing on
Fofo
7-12
Syndra.
and seeing stuff like the Syndra, like you say, which has almost been permabanned. Will Alex just be defaulting to the Rengar that we don't see at all in Korea? Or will he be trying to step up some early game presence against Ambition's Gragas? All the what ifs and just how much effort Samsung have put into researching their opponents today, it's kind of up in the air.
The fact that Rengar is one of his most played champions
I know.
speaks to the LMS meta right now.
That's true.
It is very slow burn.
We'll be talking about Cassidy when we get some China games too.
I'm ready
Hey,
for
we
the
have
Cassidy.
Rengar too. We only let Condi play it though.
Yeah, only Condi. But LMS's meta is very slow burn. It's very farm heavy. Again, extended lane phase. They're all about the hyper carries or the scaling compositions, which also leads to kind of that mid-game slump that we see from J-Team time and time again.
Yeah, and that seems to be the scariest thing that I'm getting from you guys is that it could take such a long time for JT to line up the shot that Korea have already just rolled over them at that point in time, even in this matchup when you have J-Team and Samsung.
I mean, my question there is to Papa Smithy. Is Ambition the type of jungler that will put the pressure on? Will Samsung change gears, or will they just meet LMS in their slow-paced game and beat them at it anyway?
Ambition is kind of a fluctuating player. He definitely has the solo missions we talk about where his team falls behind. He's like, I must get an advantage, and then just makes it a bigger hole. They still come back from those disadvantages at times. But Ambition, he can still just form into the farming playstyle that a lot of junglers do when their team is behind. He oscillates, but my impression will be he'll try to make something happen early. If other lanes fall behind, he'll return to farming, and Samsung will be super confident to take it to late game and try to make things happen, kind of irrespective of KeemCom.
How much does this game mean for both of these two teams in terms of momentum? Because you said they're both coming off of losses, but does it mean more to a Korean team right here if they were to lose against LMS team, Papa?
I mean, regional pride is always a big thing. You know, whenever we had interviews just before we came over this, with the representatives after a victory, they would still say we're looking to make that big performance to make Korea proud. So I think Korea definitely do come into this taking it seriously, but I feel like the stakes are lower for Korea because they've already established themselves on the world scene, whereas J-Team, again, haven't been able to earn spots at MSI, at Worlds, and then had one chance given to them at Gyeonggi and failed there as well. So I think the stakes are higher for them, but it's also a much tougher matchup for them as well.
Yeah, that's why, as you mentioned, reputation is a big one. You don't want to have a reputation where you are the choking team or you're just never going to be able to perform internationally. This is a good event for them to do so, even if it is by default being the top 4 team in your league. But getting your first step out there, it does prepare you for the second half of the LMS split. And if they can get this good showing, as the hosts mentioned, this is kind of like if you can have that reputation, a renewed one at that, and then bring it on to your domestic league, I think this is going to be a great step.
Papa, then Frosk?
I have to feel like I completely agree with your first point because I always really watch words like choker or choking for a player or for a team because it's a really big thing. These are all professional players who've dedicated their lives to performance. You don't want to give it lightly, but if you keep seeing it again and again, which unfortunately has been the case for J-Team, they kind of have to earn higher expectations. I feel like a lot of people come in either grounded or slightly optimistic. A victory here, then you can really fly the flag and be optimistic. But for now, J-Team, they have to earn high expectations on the world stage and even from their own region.
I mean, the one thing going for them is kind of the strength of schedule. It's certainly weighted the fact that they go Samsung and then RNG. I already spoke in the opening ceremony that I think that RNG is probably the weakest team that the LPL has sent, so it only technically gets easier from here. So just make a splash, make a good first impression, and see what you have for the rest of the tournament.
It's kind of frightening saying that because RNG, especially in the last week in the LPL before coming over here,
Now
did
he's
have
building
a strong
up RNG. What?
I mean,
Pick a side.
I don't have a side. I am an unbiased analyst. That's the worst
I
kind
believe
of
you're
combination.
technically LMS LPL and not LCK, so you've got 2 sides.
But notice how the
Maybe. We'll find
LMS
out.
is first
We'll
there.
find out.
You jumping on the train with me later?
Oh, maybe. About a year. Maybe.
What is
Possible.
this? You can't be on all 3 trains, Raz. Pick at least 2 trains.
Nope. Not happening. But just get out to the point. Being able to have such a great performance up against Dan Gaming, and even though they went up against EDG and it was kind of Dan Gaming.
Are they
we
at
just
this-
mentioned
are
Dan
they at
Gaming.
this tournament, Raz?
Gaming. But I'm just saying, at least they picked it up, especially Let Me and MLXG coming into this one, so it might be a little bit of a better heads up. Of course, they're bringing Y4, so we'll have to see how he performs as well.
Yeah, let's get back onto the topic of hand, though. I want to go back to Fofo and actually aim this at you, Raz. Is he the one way that the team wins? If you're looking at laning phase in particular, you know he's a very good 1v1 player. So will it actually span out from there for this team to take this?
I think so. Even regardless of what champion he plays, whether the Karma or the Orianna, as I mentioned earlier, it starts with his laning phase. He comes out with a high CS differential at 15. So then how do they use that advantage, especially if he gets his Talia? And if he can utilize it to go to the bottom lane, I really do believe he needs to get the snowball going early, so a Talia pick would be very natural.
Yeah, just to jump on the Talia train, because that is one train that I will ride for J Team.
Okay.
Fofo is a phenomenal Talia player. I know that everyone's going to talk about a Cinder. You're probably going to see it banned if enemy teams have done their research, but I just love when Fofo interacts with the rest of his map, because if you actually look at the kill participation for the rest of the members, it's not that high, particularly in the support. Jay has one of the lowest kill participations of any support going into this tournament, so it's really all on Fofo to get involved with the team and get things going for J Team.
But you mentioned Talia, the person to bring back Talia after the nerfs kind of cast her out of everyone's mind just before Worlds last year was Crown, actually. Crown played it at IEM and was the first person to bring it back. I know you're on the Rookie train. Rookie's great, but Crown brought it back, and Crown has also become the preeminent Syndra in our region. So when it comes to mid lane champion pool, maybe we'll kind of have to cast away both of these picks and kind of see the extended bench. Both these players have that. You look at, for example, the Karma that both of them play as well. There's actually quite a lot of overlap between Fofo and Crown in terms of champion picks, but the points that Raz brought up, specifically the statistics, are heavily on the side of Fofo in the LMS. So what does that mean? We know how good Crown is. Looks like the players are almost ready. I'm hoping we're going to get into this really soon.
Yeah, there's a couple of tech issues over there.
Take a minute. Look at Ambition. He's sitting like L right there. Just full Death Note.
I didn't even see it.
He's literally, that guy's about to take names, and that's scary.
Yeah, I mean, like, Icon for me is the player who definitely has the Death Note ready to scribble down all the mid laners, but yeah, it looks like he's just ready to go.
Ambition is known for his steely persona. A lot of people are worried about him as a player. It's cool to see him here. He's the married man, of course, the only professional player in League of Legends right now who is married, and yet you would think, okay, honeymoon time, Haru will keep playing. Haru was great in spring. He has played every game bar one, and his Gragas has been his trademark 7-2 on the season. Ambition has really excelled when we thought he would be an auxiliary player in the summer season.
And Gragas is really so important in the 7-12 meta, just because we have the re-emergence of Rek'Sai. We've got a lot of Rek'Sai players here, and a lot of professional players like to take the Gragas into the Rek'Sai because how they can disrupt her her engagements and things like that.
Yeah, we're getting to the nitty-gritty of some of these picks now. Raz, another question for you. What does the ideal J Team draft look like?
Ooh. I would say Draven in the top lane and Talia in the mid lane. I guess even while I'm saying it, I guess you're going to find out sooner or later.
Yep, and for now, I'm going to have to say thank you very much for your analysis, but get off my desk. Because this is me and Papa. It's, what's our duo name now, Papa?
We have to think about that.
We need to think about it. Back to the drawing board. That could be one propulse. Let's get into this. J Team and Samsung Galaxy getting into Champion Select. Thank you for sticking with us. It's going to be Zyra and Syndra to start the bans.
Yeah, the first ban here actually is towards Core JJ's Zyra. Korea, one of his biggest picks. He is over his career. By far his most played in the support role came from AD carry as well. He's a 21-8. Hasn't necessarily been a staple for him this season, but an understandable ban. And this mid lane champion pool, Syndra and Karma, they are Crown and Fofo picks. So he's handicapping himself to keep Fofo down.
Yeah, and you definitely, that was off the top of your head there, Pappy. Definitely need to look at your notes on that one. But either way, it will be Galio and Caitlyn coming in from J Team to round out their bans, while Zach and Karma come out of Samsung Galaxy.
Small point you see at the top of your screen, although the EU versus NA tournament was played on patch 7.13, we are on 7.12, just like LPL, LCK, and LMS were running last week, so it is not the same patch that you saw earlier today.
Exactly. We've gone back in time just a little, but for these teams, it's what they've been playing on, so they are used to it. First pick of Elise, high priority, good to see.
It does mean that Gragas and Rek'Sai are both available for Ambition. I saw him moving past the Rek'Sai in recent series. I love that he jumped on Rek'Sai because 2-0 Rek'Sai against Longzhu, both of his games, they came from behind, and it was his intelligent pathing of Ambition that was really the big thing in those victories. So the extra information, the ganking potential, I love seeing Ambition on Rek'Sai.
At the same time, they'll lock in the Varus alongside it for Ruler to get that one in very early, so not revealing too much in the draft so far. J Team back over to them, locking in the Kalista, and actually just going to straight up confirm their bottom lane now they have seen the Varus, and that'll be Kalista Braum.
And you just expect LCK teams, and Samsung is no exception, to focus on the pushing lanes. Ruler's most played this season is Varus, one of the strong pushing AD carries. That's going to be the big priority you'd have to imagine. in this draft. So they're going to be happy enough to take the Kalista matchup for Varus, but there still is the potential for the 2-item spike in the early fights. And J-Team, they want to get it done early game. Kalista Braum, phenomenally strong once Kalista gets the Hurricane and the Blade of the Ruin King.
That would be the way to do it, Papa. Well, Orianna will come in the mid lane for Crown as we look towards the second phase of bans now. Talia towards Fofo. We were literally talking about Fofo's Talia, so a lot of respect there from Samsung, while Rakan removed from Core JJ's champion pool.
But you start looking through the list, right? Talia now has been banned away. The Karma banned away. Orianna, one of his most played for Fofo, is taken away. Victor and Echo are the two big staple picks he's played this season. LMS has played a lot less games than LCK, so maybe he does have the extended bench, but the LeBlanc ban as well.
Yeah.
We're very much already at a point where Fofo will have to show something new, and him having lane pressure on Crown is one of the big things we expect for a J-Team victory if it was to come about.
And the problem with that, Papa, is you have this Orianna in the mid lane, a very neutralizing matchup, so then it's like, okay, what do you pick here to try and actually just beat out Crown? Well, Corki, which is being hovered right now, could be a possibility.
There's kind of two flavors of thought. You can go Cassiopeia and go super early game, even though you do get pushed out level 9 onwards, or you could go the new pick, which has been the Corki that Crown himself has played. Not necessarily a counter pick, but a very comfortable matchup into the Orianna, and also someone who can hit the 1-item spike before Orianna gets all her items together. And it's very much here, LMS, 1 item, 2 items, have a pretty significant advantage. They got a blind pick top lane, and you can't go past Renekton. So it's not like the draft has let down LMS or J-Team in this game.
And at the same time, they have a bit of late game insurance now, because Kalista will go towards that mid game build, a skirmishing build, where Corki, big magic damage crits in the late game for J-Team, while Renekton, as you said there, Papa, will be brought into the top lane for Morning, and back over to Samsung for their Rumble pick.
This is a big surprise. Now, Korea does prioritize Rumble more than any other region, but Cuvée is not a Rumble player. He only has a couple of Korea games on the Rumble, has not played it this season, played it once in spring. There was interviews about, hey, Rumble's the big pick in Korea, why don't you play it? And he says, look, it's not in my champion wheelhouse, but I play well against it. So Cuvée opting into Rumble here is a very interesting choice. Now, we are at Rift Rivals. It's not the LCK, but showing Rumble in this scenario, I'm very interested to watch, because Cuvée, when I saw him play Rumble, he wasn't a Rumble god. He's not Huni, he's not Mara, and he's not Smeb. So it's actually going to be very interesting for me to track, in not a fantastic laning matchup, how his Rumble looks against Morning's Renekton.
It's not a good matchup, but many analysts will say that is a very good matchup in terms of the players. Cuvée has shown a lot, whereas Morning is considered to be one on the weaker end of the top laners in Rift Rivals.
I think that's a fair assessment, and Cuvée has been in form. But on form on Kled and Renekton is very different to being not a native Rumble player. So if he can do it here as well, you add it to the list of things he's already shown this season, and then you can get excited about Cuvée.
And as we just saw the coaches shake hands, talk to me about the compositions here, Papa. So who are you preferring on this one? Because we have the Rumble coming in for the top lane there of Cuvée. How does that impact the rest of Samsung?
I mean, J-Team does have a lot of tools in the early game, which is where they are strongest as a team. And if they can transition early to mid and actually stick the landing, they look great if that was the draft. But because of their reputation, because of their struggles, if they can play this draft perfectly, I think they'll take the game. But I'm skeptical about that, and I think that Samsung can outlast them and out-team fight them in the late game.
And that will be the gut feeling, pretty much regardless of what happens in the Champions Select going into the game. Though I am happy to see that J-Team got a draft that should theoretically work for them in their strengths.
You hate it when a team that comes in as the underdog compounds that with a poor draft. I don't feel like it's a poor draft here, but Samsung can rewrite that. The draft only matters till First Blood comes in, till early battle lines are drawn. So there's a lot to like, but also the healthy skepticism that always happens in a Korea versus other region match.
And there's going to be a lot of eyes, not only on the team, but also on those individuals, as we have spoken about so many times. Fofo in the mid lane on his Corki. He did have to show something a little bit different, as we will be getting onto the Rift Rivals. Very first game in Rift Rivals, the Asian Rift Rivals between LMS, LCK, and LPL. We'll be starting with our LPL representatives. We'll be seeing them later today. But J-Team, a lot to prove for them, whereas Korea, they can sit on their high horse for now. We'll see if they can be dethroned by J-Team.
That's kind of the narrative every Worlds, right? Is the high horse of Korea and everyone coming as a challenger. It's a different tournament here. We are going to see 3 versus 3 as we see in this game, 4 versus 4, more representatives from each region. We don't allow 4 Korean teams at Worlds. That'd be a tricky thing to do. So in the end, we get a tournament like this, which is going to be super fun to track. I casted tournaments like this in Season 2 before the league systems were really codified. It's been a long time since we've had that opportunity. And now finally seeing it on the Rift here, and J-Team with a good draft behind it. I'm hyped to see all the possibilities that Rift Rivals has for us.
Something a little bit different, and it all starts with this game, Samsung against JT. This is the best of one, remember, so winner will take it all. And it means that in the best of one format, literally anything can happen. We've seen some crazy upsets in the course of League of Legends, Papa, so this could be one of them, but still, it will start with the early game. And Ambition, already pathing through his bottom side here, has taken up his blue, moving on to his Merc Wolves.
Gonna get a pretty hard leash onto blue and then continue around. So we'll see what Ambition chooses to do. Traditionally has been pretty polarizing. He usually focuses on one lane, top or bottom. Laning stats for bot lane for Samsung is one of the best in the entire region. They've been surprisingly strong, even if Ruler isn't the household name that Bang, Deft, and Prey are. They have very good laning statistics, and you might be surprised to know that the laning statistics question mark for Samsung is Crown. He has the highest percentage of team deaths of any mid lane at 25%, which is insanely high given that you look at his opponent, Fofo, he's at 9%, which is the lowest of any player in the LMS.
And that does speak a lot towards them, though it does also bear questions of how much does that actually mean on the Rift when they go toe-to-toe. And theoretically, it does speak a lot towards Fofo as a player.
And it does mean also that Samsung have been blind picking wave clear and kind of dealing with that in terms of what it causes. Karma, very common pick for them. Usually Crown is just pushing out while Ambition is top or bot lane. His focus is very rarely mid lane, and that's why Crown just kind of has to rely on his historical great play and not get a lot of resources until the late game.
Sure. Let's take a look at the bottom lane here. BB and Jay going into Ruler and Core JJ. I've got the Tam Kench coming in the end as well. With that Varus, so Brom's picked him very early in this draft, so often in the LPL we see that as a response to these hard engaged lanes like a Thresh, like a Blitzcrank, to just trying to put a spanner in the works.
I also like that we're highlighting Morning in the top lane, watching that matchup. J-Team against Flash Wolves. Was solo killed in pretty interesting fashion, building for lane. Now he's in a lane dominant position, and that can always play with your mindset. If you've had a recent bad performance, and then you're told, well, you've got the lane advantage, you need to push out, you need to control your opponent, that can definitely cause mind games on a player. And we'll see if Morning, in this position where he should have lane control, can find that healthy balance between pressuring the Rumble, but also not just overextending for a gank.
And while Fofo is getting battered down in the mid lane, he will have to take a trip back to base. He does have teleport, so he should be okay on this one as Crown pushes in. But in the top lane, Morning did also start with that Duran Shield. And that, as a Renekton, definitely speaks to the way he wants to play out the lane. Because Duran Shield, great into Rumble, though I do hold my thought on this one. As Fofo chooses not a good time to jump in, because Ambition is on the bottom side, takes the Thunderlord's proc. And Ambition will not go for this flash as Alex comes around the side, coming out to Cocoon. A lot of damage coming down onto Ambition. He'll jump away, but Repel used defensively, and everyone backs away.
That was actually a really awkward scenario all around. Ambition was only going to enter lane to help push because Crown was very low on mana. And then he was kind of in this situation where he overextended, pushing, was caught, had to flash away. A Rek'Sai without flash up is still something that doesn't necessarily have to be respected in terms of ability to pressure lanes. So that's a big cost from Ambition just to help Crown push out.
JT are going to be feeling pretty good as well. The fact that mid lane did not have to burn that flash. Kuve also putting that hurt down onto Morning. And just to revisit that point, I only like to leave a point unfinished. Morning, because he's on that Duran Shield, he's not looking to dominate lane. He hasn't gone for the Duran's Blade right here. He's looking to pretty much survive against this Rumble.
Duran's Blade Pulse. We have Marin going Cull first Renekton very frequently in Korea, so
that's what I'm talking about.
This is the most defensive by far, but still does strive the balance, right? You still do get the on-hit damage to minions, still are able to push in. But Cuve, if anything, will get a more comfortable lane because of the Duran Shield choice, and even though he went further, going defensive itemization in a lane like this, and Cuve happily farming away, really throwing across any question marks about his Rumble play, Cuve is perfectly happy on top.
Exactly, and there is still the caveat that Morning is one of the weaker top laners in this tournament, but the fact that Cuve will bring it out in Game 1 in Samsung is really nice to see. So back to this bottom lane, pretty much even farm between these two. There is a part advantage though to Ruler. Now it just seems like every single one of these lanes, Papa, is just slowly going the way of Samsung, whether it's in farm or just pressure from what we can see.
And that's unfortunately where you come back to these fallback patterns of Korea versus LMS, or in terms of regional strength, because you look at BB, and unfortunately his laning stats, specifically in summer, are very low. He's actually right down the bottom in most of the laning statistics in the LMS. Despite being a legend, this guy is a Season 2 world champion, still on, spiritually, the organization TPA, now J-Team. And yet, this season especially, the laning stats have gone down. And Ruler and Core JJ, again, despite not being Bang and Wolf, are probably top 1 or top 2 duo lane in Korea, so it should be no surprise that they're doing very comfortably in the 2v2.
Is always the old question, can old dogs learn new tricks? And so far, it's a big test for him, but Samsung have definitely done a lot in the last couple of years.
We've got a lot of old dogs at this tournament. We have BB, we have Ambition, we have Score, we have players who have been playing professionally since 2011, 2012. Right. So the answer for a lot of those has been yes on the reinvention, but doesn't mean that every season's meta fits the playstyle and also the effective champion pool of every player.
And it has changed a lot of top laners just all over the world, moving into more of those carries. Can they actually adapt? Can they move on? And honestly, even in LPL, the rookie of the split, Kabe, just could not adapt. He was literally the best player in top, and now is sunk to the bottom. And
that's why people say, where's Haru? Because Haru was a star, was a top 3 MVP player as the jungler for Samsung, and then has played just a single game. And you just have to look at the meta and say, okay, well, Rengar is gone. That was one of his most effective picks. He was the best Rengar in Korea, maybe even the world for a time, but the champion pool changes, things change, and now top lane always
Morning is going in. I mean, he was not going to be able to pick up that kill regardless of what he was doing there other than pressure, but Kuve just turns it around, places down the equalizer, and goes back to normality.
Well, you speak that word pressure, and you can see Samsung feel like they have the pressure to be able to roam from the bot lane. Ambition will steal away the red buff. Suddenly, Samsung's control of the map is extending from just the river vision further into red buff. And given where the game is at, and given that Crown will continue to basically infinite scale on the Orianna, it's a bit unfortunate that J-Team already find themselves in a pressure disadvantage, because this is around the phase, you know, moving towards one item where they should really have the control of every skirmish and every team fight.
And my eyes are on Alex as well, on the Elise here. I guess this is a priority pick, is known to be the premier ganking early game jungler. And Alex has gotten a couple things done, has been able to come with those counter ganks in mid lane, but outside of that has not really put huge amounts of pressure onto these pushing lanes from Samsung.
And there's a lot of questions for J-Team as a team. I was, again, aping that last series against Flash Wolves. Game 1, drafted 3, 80 carry marksman champions, and then just hard initiated on fights, getting into melee range, not really managing their resources very well. They seem to draft smartly, but don't play around draft smartly, and that's hurt them a lot. And them understanding that is, here we go.
Oh, Kuve going into the overheat. That's just going to be an easy first blood coming in for Alex out of the jungle.
Renekton and Elise, it's the premier top lane jungle duo. See the fans clapping very happily, seeing that first blood has gone to the home region. That's always a steadier. That's a really good feel moment for the side of J-Team, but it only means something if they can continue to create pressure and find other objectives. A single kill onto Renekton while Rumble's happily farming is just a little bit of happiness in a vacuum.
Exactly. It's a morale boost, but what does it turn into later on in the game? But still, JT, if they can accelerate this, they can go for those more of those skirmishes. The dragon up right now is the mountain dragon. So if they can actually put some pressure on that one, start to fight Samsung, maybe they can turn it into more.
I mean, Crown's getting closer and closer to level 9, and we'll be able to shove kind of in the face of Fofo. You do have to go Hex Drinker awkwardly. You can't just rush Trinity Force against an Orianna, because largely when you're going for your Phosphorus Bomb auto trades, you are going to be in range of the ball, and you might just have a turnaround trade with a Shockwave. So you have to go Magic Resist, so you're halting, you're building for lane, not necessarily for team fights as much. And Crown will start getting the pressure back that was kind of Koki only. It's a big rotation.
Yeah, coming out from Core JJ, pumps the Abyssal Voyage, turns up, says hello to Ambition, and gives him a gateway into the enemy jungle to place down some deep vision.
Vision very shallow from the side of J-Team. Only just a single ward that was put down by Fofo as he cleared away the enemy Raptors. So something like the Mountain Drake start, which they would love with the Trinity Forces and the other itemization coming in soon, is delayed. And speaking of delayed itemization, Morning has gone for the Spectre's Cowl first. Very often, even in a matchup like the Rumble, you want to be going for the Tiamat, the Phage, looking to kill your opponent rather than sustain through damage. So a defensive mindset in the Doran Shield, more defensive mindset in the Spectre's Cowl. At some point, Rumble is just going to keep building for lane and be okay. And that's where the effectiveness of Morning's Renekton will start to drop off.
And then it begs the question, how long is it going to take until we see these spikes from JT? Because this Hex Drinker, the top lane going for Spectre's Cowl, is just going to delay that more and more. And then when do we see JT ever pull the trigger? And this does go back to what Raz was saying. You know, this is a region who does take a long time to turn online, long time to get all their ducks in a row and then execute on the plan. And then during that time, maybe Samsung had just accelerated too far beyond when they can ever contest.
And it's a real fair point, because if you try to get all your ducks in a row against a team that innately may be better than you, by the time those ducks in a row, if they're delayed, the enemy team has itemization to largely negate what is any advantages. And Fofo has to flash.
Flash out of there of the quick sombrero, point blank from Crown. He has burnt that one, so he's both summoners still to him. Ambition just saying, hello Alex, how's it going? Didn't expect to see you here in this part of the neighborhood.
I did promise you solo missions, Pulse. That's sometimes the Ambition way. He'll make the swag walk out. He'll call it a swag walk. It was definitely a walk of shame.
Yeah, he definitely, well, he solid snaked his way out. You know, he alerted the gods, but they quickly forgot about him.
Corki actually went teleport, only appreciating it now, but very much focusing on just staying in lane and getting the push down. Doesn't have the Trinity Force, but at least the Sheen to re-enter lane and get some chip damage on the outer mid lane turret is something for J-Team, who we've already mentioned a couple of times, are very focused on those mid-game spikes, getting the outer turret ring down as bot lane.
Yeah, Fate's Call coming in here. Alex coming in from the top side. I mean, the communication 100% came in from the jungler there. I'm coming down, and BB pulls the trigger. So just a bit of a wasted ult there.
Then we just, again, we return to this point where Samsung pushing in the top lane. Orianna finally back in mid. We'll return to pushing. Push war going really well for Samsung. And now with the vision pushed up, the power of this Elise, who we already saw with the Elise Renekton, which is that deadly top lane duo I know the Korean teams will be aspiring to, but not largely able to pick up. Yeah. That phase is starting to go down as Cuvée face checks Morning.
Morning is very low though, and has already used the dominance. Cuvée turning around is now unoverheated, if that's a word, and then we'll actually just stroll back to lane. It's all good, no problem.
Unoverheated.
Unoverheated, that's the one.
You've coined that one, Pulse.
He's cooled down will probably be the correct English term, but unoverheated is what I'm taking to the bank. In the bottom lane, I do want to correct myself very slightly because Core JJ did burn his flash in that one, I think, off screen, when the Fate's Call was used. That being said, Alex has found himself in top lane. Ambition and Core JJ on the way.
Yeah, considering ending the laning phase in Abyss of Void, there it is.
They're pulling the trigger. Can they get the kill down on Cuvée very quickly? Yes, they can. The Venomous Bite comes in for that quick kill, and Alex now called out pretty much with his pants down. Core JJ and the ultimate. Void Rush comes out there with the kill. A 1-for-1 trade.
Yeah, Cuvée was just too tasty a bait and was taken down. It does mean that Varus' top lane, we're still waiting for first turret blood or first brick to be taken. First inroads is made in the bot side, but there's 3 members here from Samsung. It's going to be a close race. I assume Samsung will win it.
Yeah, ultimately it will be a tower trade here, Papa, but with a tempo advantage to Samsung.
And it does come down. Continues to put the gold in, so even though they've been a bit foolhardy in how aggressive they've been pulling the trigger, they are still getting the gold lead. They still are comfortably letting Crown scale up, and they don't even have to give up their blue buff. Crown could be collapsed on.
Bad man moment, but Fofo's found him as he's rotating from the jungle, and that is technically a 1v1 kill.
And that was definitely greed coming through from Crown. Another death coming through that we have seen too often this season, you'd say, in Korea. Samsung just back away. Remember, Crown could have just walked up and contested the enemy blue and taken it, tried to get greedy in an area where J-Team is strong, and now they can make this clean rotation to mid. Probably won't be able to take down the turret, but they're going to get a lot of standing gold established for them with very low turrets around the map.
Hey, they can put down the damage, they can put down the pressure as well, and all of a sudden, JT are now technically ahead in gold by 200, but they've also just pushed back the pressure that it seemed like Samsung just had in all of these lanes, and from this just mixture of plays have managed to pull themselves back in. So proactivity, very good to see from JT.
And they're going to be playing with confidence now. They've got 3 kills in their arsenal. They're feeling better about where the game is at. They're certainly still in touching distance at 15 minutes. We know they have a 200 gold lead. They aren't collapsing super early as you can see Fofo. He's got a one-track mind.
Damage. Turns the ultimate back around to Ruler, who just sidestepped the last one, but that was always 100-0 from Fofo.
Well, Fofo's decided that he has anointed himself the carry and he's going to try and take this game over. 19 CS ahead and a good matchup for the Corki. Turning on to Ruler, not being able to take him down but force a recall. Tempo of this game is largely with J-Team, and that's why they're the first team to make a visit to the Drake as top lane.
Everyone's collapsing down on Morning, and pretty much his job right now is to just try and get out alive or buy some time. He pops the Dominus, but he's slowly being chased down by Core JJ. Ultimate being used there as well, the Void Rush, but Fofo coming in from the bot side. Nah, just never mind, he's been eaten.
Roll the
Roulette
flash.
turns around. Big ultimate comes down. Fofo should be funny. Drops away the Valkyrie. Still alive. Jay also there as well to contest. And he does manage to get out of life. So saving Private Fofo. Mission complete.
And I get the Drake. So that's the trade-up is a single pick for the Drake, which you would take if you're the side of J-Team. A much better trade than Crown, who gave up his life just to claim the blue buff and then ended up giving it over. So still, very comfortable territory for J-Team. They picked up first, but they've picked up first Drake. They didn't pick up the first turret, but in a phase where they need to take the ascendancy, the early game, in the first match for the LMS at the tournament, J-Team have not rolled over, and that makes it a much more interesting tournament to track.
And with Pride right now, as Cuvée is just casually recalling in this brush, though has been spotted by Fofo, who will chase after. Cuvée turning around with the Electro Harpoons. Though Fofo is putting down a lot of damage, and Alex is closing in as well. Can he dodge this cocoon? Well, Cuvée knows it right now and has to turn back around the damage. But again, Fofo finds himself another kill, 2-0-0.
I mean, Cuvée is just kind of zombie pushing at this point. He doesn't have any pressure on this side. No one was playing on the top side for Samsung, so he shouldn't be surprised to find a death. But you could say the same about Morning. It's not the same sort of gap close and damage to take him down.
And in the end, Fafa, we were talking about why would you go for the Spectre's Cowl early? Well, pretty much he's soaking all of this pressure from Samsung, and while that does result in the bottom lane tower, he's actually just very good at being a wild goose chase. He's just a very tanky goose.
And kind of the sad thing, or at least the crazy thing to track about Samsung's last loss, which was against the Jin Air Green Wings, perfect game in game one, was how standard it was. It felt like Samsung kind of watched as Jin Air made the right decisions and took them out without even big mistakes. Here, Samsung have made some big mistakes. They have overextended. They have allowed J-Team to trade up in objectives. Is it enough to make a match victory? With the J-Team especially, we don't know the answer there, as they have to get, even on the domestic stage, pretty big leads. Their team fighting often lets them down, but this is a lot of worrying stuff for Samsung. It's a different kind of tournament. It isn't Worlds implications, but Samsung looks shaky in their first match where they came in big favorites.
And let's add some specifics to it, because JT constantly trade objectives when Samsung make a play. They were pushing top lane, they were pushing mid lane, and at the same time are taking Rift Herald. So in terms of tempo, they should be able to get that back with a net win at some point when Alex eventually places that down. And right now, I'm looking towards JT and saying, where did this team come from?
But what you can see is kind of some of the flaws in the execution. You look at the minimap, especially when we have Samsung Vision toggled, the control ward line for Samsung's actually very good around the entrance to the Drake, around the bot side. So the vision line for J-Team is very shallow or absent, and I think that's where often teams can fall apart. Core JJ's vision game as a support is one of the best in Korea. And if you're going to be getting these leads and trading up, if you don't do it with vision control as well, you can't be surprised where you make a misplay, you lose a team fight, and suddenly the map is scary to go even to your own Raptors. So pushing up vision is something they need to do to cement what has been a great objective early game.
And that's pretty much the next step that we have to see from JT right here, because I want to see what they do with this Herald, how impactful it is. Is it just used to break open that mid tower, which is honestly very, very low. Someone could just walk over and tap it, and it will go down. So hopefully they can make a bit more happen off that. Though right now, Samsung have not really been dissuaded from this early game and are still moving around the map as a group.
Well, you look at the lineup and you're like, how did J-Team make things happen? So we have to hold that point as bot lane.
We've gone on a voyage into the bottom lane. Morning is trying to make his way out, and this will be a very slow death. If he even dies at all, because he slices and dices, he's back at his tower.
No eulogizing a Renekton who has flash up. He will live through this particular scenario, but just to return to the point, the best way for J-Team to win, especially with the item build, they've gone for the Haunting Guy second from the Elise, is control wards into Samsung face checking. So setting up that exclusive vision. They don't have long range engage. There isn't an Ashe. Playing the map with the Corki who can rotate now that he has Trinity Force, and also getting picks in transition. What they want to do is start pushing control wards around the Baron area where Alex is pathing now. Control wards there, Samsung has to face check going into a Baron. Haunting Guys at least takes you down. Corki gets the faster run between mid lane and top lane, takes an inner turret. That's the next step in the game, and that's why it's good to see one of them place so far.
And this is what I'm used to out of the LPL, contesting red buffs.
Hey.
And Fofo gets one of those. You can tell I'm a changed man, Papa, because as soon as the Baron spawned like 20 seconds ago, I was like, why aren't the teams fighting over it? What's going on right now? Where's Dan Gaming? But these teams playing a little bit slower, though I do like the contest. And Fofo picked up the red as well.
I still kind of shake my head that Goong is still playing at the top level in 2017. His re-rise and Dan Gaming's rise has been a funny story too. They did relegate Easy Hoon and friends on the side of Vici Gaming.
They're
so
very lovable.
There was something special about the world champion Bengi getting relegated by Goong. in 2017.
Hey, another one of those old dogs as well, and you can see the man on your screen, BB, also one of those who's going to absolutely destroy this red buff. Got him.
One of the things I love about League of Legends is the fact that careers are getting longer. Goon can come back. Players can, when the meta suits them, come back from previously what would have been a permanent retirement, right?
Yeah.
So the average age of League of Legends players, competitive players, is getting older as more and more players are having the 3 to 5 to 7 year career that looked impossible 2 to 3 years ago.
I mean, the common thought was that if you go past a certain age, that your mechanics get a little bit sloppy and just not as fast as the younger folk nowadays. But the strategic minds are still a power on the Rift, and talking about those macro games, big strength towards them as Cocoon just flies by Ambition.
The macro game right now for J-Team, given where they're at in the game and itemization, is probably a little bit too shallow. Rift Herald was used bot lane, and as we can see, not getting much usage.
Rift Herald didn't die for this.
That's true. Well, I mean, Rift Herald.
I mean, he did twice, but feels bad, man.
It is a double Rift Herald situation now with the summoning of it. Samsung just playing the vision game, though. We mentioned how J-Team want to creep it forward. It's been held down. There's no more control ward on the red buff. No exclusive vision here. And J-Team's end result isn't to send Fofo in a side lane with Trinity Force. They're just kind of pushing minions in the mid lane. I guess it's so that they can rotate down for a Cloud Drake, but not really the bounty they want when, honestly, they're at their strongest point itemization, short of maybe the Hurricane being completed on BB.
That's true. JT are going for their second dragon of the game. They would have liked if it wasn't a Cloud Dragon, but you get more and more of those and you will be speeding around the Rift. But they definitely would have wanted something else. BB face plants the wall, but it's fine. He's going back to base. Morning gets the honey fruit as well. But you can see all of this vision now coming out from Samsung around the top side of the map. They always get something from this one as Ambition angers the Baron. He's back over. Of course, JJ saves him from the wrath of Baron. And then we'll go back to base. We're all good. Let's take a look at some of his item builds, as I just saw Fofo picked up his BF sword on top of his Trinity Force. So there are big item power spikes coming in from JT.
Yeah, the Hurricane also that we mentioned before, that's completed. Trinity Force would be lovely. Sorry, Infinity Edge would be lovely, but going to take time to come together. J-Team very strong in the 5v5, and Samsung more about rotating Crown to the top lane, picking up minion waves. He's still at 1 item, so Orianna has a long way to go in her item build. So for now, Samsung just playing this vision game, just trying to deny J-Team getting exclusive vision around Baron, and it's on J-Team to make plays in other lanes, so somehow getting coverage for Fofo to, much like Renekton, be pushing into this inner turret in the top side is the big victory for them right now, short of taking the Baron.
And I've got to praise at this point in time Morning. We're 23 minutes in, almost 24 into the game, and he's died once. He's been ganked like 7 billion times, and he's got basically the same farm as Kuve. Like, he has done an exceptional job at being the guy who's focused. It felt like he came into this knowing that was going to be the case, but the weakness that you would expect from JT has not shown itself.
When the matchup was announced, when you knew it was Morning versus Kuve, if you're a J-Team fan, you're concerned, understandably, especially with how good Kuve was in summer season, but there is a big caveat here. Jumping on the Rumble is something very different for Kuve, and that takes nothing away from Morning, but his assignment has become easier because Kuve counterpicked himself for lane and is on a champion he doesn't have great proficiency on.
Poor JJ getting chased down. A lot of ult bits being used on the Tam Kench, so he jumps away. Meanwhile, in the backline,
They're still
Ambition going to town on Alex. BB, meanwhile, getting chased down, but that's going to be the save there onto the ADC. Core JJ on point, comes back out, takes him down for the double kill over to Kuve.
And Pulse, they didn't have the vision to make the play. They kind of smelled blood in the air and went for the hard commit on the backline. Don't get out of it. That's the turnaround in this game. Samsung stick the landing. They want to get the outer mid lane turret. They turn it on in an instant. And J-Team, they had full control of the game. Will they be able to get it back? Because that felt like a sea change to me.
It definitely feels like a switch has been flipped in that one, Papa. And we're now 4-4 in terms of kills. Samsung now back in the lead in terms of gold. Ambition would like to take out this ward before hopping over the wall, courtesy of Core JJ. But it is still those 2 kills in that mid lane, which did not result in the mid lane tower.
But it was just too much of a risk from J-Team. When you have a comp like they do, we're going to see the replay here. Consider how deep they're going. They have the information of the minion line, but they don't know where Orianna is. They don't know where Ambition is. They continue to go super, super deep, and Crown flashes in for the begin here. QV cuts down the line. They just roast the duo lane. And it was just so unnecessary because they weren't returning to top side as, okay, JT on Baron.
Actually just on Baron right now, and it should be going down. What's confirmed? Goes over the Kalista, as always. JT with the Baron, but what happens now? Morning goes down, and everybody from JT trying to run away, survive with some of these Baron busts. Fofo extremely low, but Kuve was chasing after. He goes into the Zhonya's, but he's on the chase. He's on the hunt. Equalizer misses its mark, and Fofo, don't go that way, Fofo. Oh, it goes into his bottom jungle, but Core JJ, he's hungry. He's looking for a meal right now. Alex should be here to save him, hopefully. Fofo turning it around very
He's just trying to zone him so they can get the inner turret.
Pushing down the mid lane, Papa.
Yeah, just wanted to zone him to get the inner turret. Wasn't actually trying to chase down a kill on the Tahm Kench. Out of context, that was a strange one as Corki teleports in. Not really that many low health members to clean up, only Crown.
I'm scared for Ambition. This seems like another solo expedition where he's trying to get out, but Fofo goes the wrong way, so he's dodged the guards on this one. Good job, Ambition.
So we're going to have to get a replay to get the full context. I imagine the cliff notes is that Samsung got a victory backed, and J-Team were like, it's either Baron now or Baron never. Made the suicide engage, and the Baron got the Baron crucially. It was looking awkward as the Ren didn't come out instantly, and the Baron was sitting there awkwardly at 300 health being like, where am I going? Turned out it was going to be going to the side of J-Team. Only a couple are going to be wearing the buff. It's a nice injection of gold, but Samsung, even though they didn't pick up the Baron, after that sea change we mentioned already, 4 turrets, 7 kills, now actually have a gold lead. And J-Team are going to wonder where all their advantages go because they do never get stronger than they are right now. Liandry's complete, Infinity Edge, Trinity Force complete, the Hurricane and the Blade of Ruin complete. This is the apex of J-Team's comp, and Samsung do have the gold lead we spoke about, and it's starting to get to the worrying territory where even if J-Team play things perfectly, they haven't necessarily drafted for 5v5. They get a pick. That could work, but apart from that, you feel like Samsung, they run around as 5 and they just try to make the best of every scenario.
Well, JT are starting to mobilize in the mid lane. Interesting Cocoon as Ruler will start to walk away here. But it's like, can they actually do anything with this Baron buff now, or are they just going to sit on the laurels? Because if they go for the latter choice here, Papa, then Samsung, exactly what you painted the picture for me is going to happen.
Awkwardly, with the comp they have, 5 Baron buffs, and the distribution of Baron buffs in 3 lanes, was what they were really needing. They needed to have Corki with a Baron buff in top while they had Baron buff minions in other lanes to keep the pressure up because they don't have the initiation. We said it a couple of times, barring some sort of crazy Fates Call, Glacial Fissure play, which we've already seen them try and fail, they will not make much out of a Baron because they don't really have a force comp. They have a play multiple lanes comp, and 1-3-1 is looking like the only way forward. That's why Corki does go top lane, but the accumulated pressure in the other 2 lanes is probably going to go the way of Samsung.
And that speaks to me and it says, well, we're probably looking at a longer game now from JT where they have to go for another Baron, also get that one. And then if it goes long, then Samsung are just going to simply outscale, do more damage and beat them in the 5v5. And that just starts to feel pretty bad when JT had such a good early game.
It's just one of those situations where once again you have that clear VOD stamp where you're like, well, we were doing really well until this point. And you might think, okay, great laning point, you'll take it away, you'll work on that. But it's been J-Team's story for almost a year now. Has been very much rinse and repeat, doing well in the early game, then making a crucial execution mistake. Is that a shot calling problem? Is that a coaching problem? We don't know, but it's alarming that this has been the story for basically a year.
And we did see some glimmers of hope though, and that's what did make me excited about this one. And that's not to say that JT are not out of this game just yet. That's a double negative. They're not out of this game yet, is what I was trying to say.
But the sinking feeling, Pulse. It's, you know, it's
there. It's in my gut. I feel it.
Are you sure that wasn't lunch?
Oh, it might have been, yeah, as well. It was quite delicious. But we were pushing up this mid lane here with BB. The Sentinel saying hi as well. And JT are sitting in some bushes, but it's very difficult to get a catch, especially when there's a Rek'Sai under the team. Ambition's just wandering around, seeing who's in his jungle.
I mean, you could definitely read the weather with your prediction of it being a long game because Crown is top lane. I'm just going to pick up more CS. I'd really love to have 4 items. I'm working on that. Rumble and Renekton are trading CS in bottom. And all this time, Samsung are piling on gold and so confident in taking the 5v5 fights later. So it does feel like Samsung are just saying, okay, let's get all our resources together, wait for all our summoners to be up. They actually are up right now. And then just reorganize our threats and maybe just wait for the next Baron because guess what? When you group up for a Baron, Callisto wants to get the Secure Shore, the Shockwave, it's going to be primo.
Sure. And while I do like predicting the weather, I prefer horoscopes because I can say super generic things and they always ring true and therefore I'm just a genius all the time.
That's what I've heard about you, Paul. Your reputation precedes itself.
Someone's going to win this game.
Rift Genius.
Rift Genius.
Richard Polskamp.
I'll take it. Good title. What's
Fallback career.
Fallback career. It's all good. I'll take it. Cool, JJ. All the vision's being taken around this Baron right now. And even though JT, as soon as the Baron wore off, it was like, all right, I guess we just go back to base now, and we'll just collect these waves. And it does have the feeling of a 40, 45-minute game written all over it.
And so the reason why Samsung were happy to continue playing side waves is that that's one of their biggest strengths is side wave minion control. And J-Team right now have to deal with a pushing top lane as their blue starting to spawn, as they're getting control in the area. It's no coincidence that Samsung is having a minion wave pushing as blue buff is spawning. Crown can exit with it. That bottom minion wave is pushing as well. And when you stack these advantages in the macro sense, you lose a team fight, you lose the game, because everything else is set up for Samsung to triumphantly break the base if they pick up a fight in the next minute or so while the waves are working for them.
And that's the scary thing. One fight could definitely just mean the game. The way they've set up this map, and JT, I mean, you know this is going to come down to that one pivotal moment in this game, and some may say that the pivotal moment already happened. So if they can change their fate, if they can change history, then that will come down pretty much to the mechanical outplays in the next fight.
Certainly going to be a struggle, given that now they don't have forward vision, because they have to have much more defensive vision. You start worrying that some of those paths to get vision around Baron are very uniquely suited for the Equalizer or the Shockwave, and worst of all, both of them at the same time. That can be devastating. J-Team going to keep playing the vision game. 35 seconds to the first Baron. They kind of snuck under the nose of Samsung Galaxy. Will not be a return of that. Core JJ largely just going to be playing around this area. Seems to know where the vision is at roughly, but the items are piling up. 3.5 onto Crown. Cuvée, his equalizers this game have been decent. We haven't seen the game-breaking equalizer, but could still be to come.
And some put their faith in the line, but I put my faith in Fofo in the mid lane. He's 2-0-0. It's been like that for about half an hour, but he did have a very good early game. And this is the guy we were talking about to try and carry this game for JT. And it feels like if there is going to be any type of late game insurance, it's going to be the Corki who will ramp up later on into the game.
Oh, you say insurance, kind of flimsy insurance pan, only having a Corki compared to...
Yeah, the guy who sold it to me was pretty dodgy, but it was cheap.
Was it one of those volcano insurance things where you're like, I don't think we have volcano eruptions around here. And he's like, aren't you overdue for one?
And it was like, I mean, you're right, so I guess I'll go for it.
It is a bit of a flimsy insurance here. I mean,
it's something, Papa, and I'm trying here.
Because the query, let's hold that thought.
Yeah.
They want to kill Ruler really badly.
In comes Jay. Cool Jay there as well, and he's the time Ken. Should be able to gobble up his ADC. Ambition as well, still staying in this one as the redemption comes down. Doesn't look like he's going to be saved though. He does pop the ultimate, goes in even deeper. There you go, Ambition. That's my boy. And he will go down in that one. But that's the jungler dead, and Baron spawned.
And that's a great time for J-Team. They pick up the pick. Ruler walking up. Actually was preyed upon. Could have flashed early. Just relied on Core JJ to get him out. But Ambition gives up his life for it. They start off the Baron, but they want to turn.
It's going to turn into a fight. Flash coming in from Morning for the engagement. They instantly take down Ruler. Krog getting chased out as well. The Renekton unkillable at this point in time. Core JJ trying to wobble away from the fight, but overall, this is another pick over to JT, though they are wounded.
And it's a quick pick, which means that Ambition is still 20 seconds away from spawning. No longer has a global on the Rek'Sai. Will have to home guard his way back. I think Samsung might just be giving up the Baron. It's against the rend from the Kalista, so the percentages say it's probably not going to be Baron. It's going to be Baron to JT.
And this is what we were talking about, Papa. They can change their fate. It's going to be tough, but it came off a pick. Almost another kill onto Cuvée. Fofo stuck in the mid lane. However, his good friend, Core J there to save him. That being said, JT again with another Baron.
So strange to see Ruler walk up twice, and both times so costly. Here he walks up, could have pre-flashed, but just thought that Core JJ would render him safe. But they take the Glacial Fissure. The extra knockup means that Core JJ escapes on almost no health. Ambition basically gives up his life. He tried to drop damage by channeling his ultimate, but then, of course, was in the middle of a fight and was going to die. He's the one person that can't give up his life. Then Ruler's the person to face check. He also gives up his life. As J-Team was smart, they didn't fully commit on the Baron. They were fully committed on the turn. And both those things together do actually put J-Team comfortably with a second Baron in this game, and Samsung once again on the back foot. That was an awkward thing to say.
Okay, well,
I got there eventually.
There you go. It's all about the destination, right? It's not about the journey. Samsung, I mean, only a few of them have died. You look at the totals, 6 kills, and it's more about how pivotal those have been. And JT have been striking when they need to. Though Morning has got very deep onto Cuvée. He's going to back up in this one. I think that is definitely the right choice.
Map's looking good from the side of J-Team as well. The control wards are pushed up. J-Team playing between mid lane and bottom lane with Baron. A lot of what was working for Samsung is no longer an option during the Baron buff duration. It's a good pressure game from G-Team, and every auto attack from Fofo on this turret is going to rip it apart.
This tower's pretty much gone at this point. Kuve doesn't even really want to defend it. The call has been made. Let's move to mid lane. Maybe we can do something there. As those rockets are starting to hurt. That was through shield as well.
All Samsung can do is kind of weather the storm. All they can do is endure. They don't have strong initiation of their own either. Ambition is not going to be pushing up with no flash. Brawl is not going to be looking for any flash chain of corruptions at this quandary either. So J-Team, they'll continue to push back. They'll continue to pile on items. But Samsung, I think both teams now will have that timestamp where they'll wonder how they allowed the enemy team back into a game that could have been iced one way or the other.
I'm just saying, my shady insurance is starting to pay off quite nicely. 3-0-1 right now. He's picked up triple items.
Could you send over the number?
No,
like I could also go for some insurance.
No, I mean, you behind your boy Samsung right now, but I mean, of course, I'm unbiased, though I want JT to win here.
That's a very situational type of unbiasedness right there.
Yeah, 100%. Ambition, gonna be backing it up. Alex, moving into this jungle here, placing down some more wards. And that shallow vision before has turned into some very deep vision now from JT, who know exactly what they need to do when they're ahead, which is great.
So far, so good. Does feel like this game may have a couple more twists and turns. We thought maybe we had seen the turning point, but now we're left wondering. Samsung are piling items and getting Banshee Veil on both of their AP carries. Going to be another person who can face check and put down vision around what's going to start feeling like an inevitable third Baron, perhaps, to decide the game. Baron buff about 25 seconds away from running out. So J-Team just continue the full court press for now.
Fofo is on his way top lane, indicated by the fact he's said he's on the way about 9-10 times. So we have it confirmed they are in top lane. There are some missing members right now from Samsung, but this tower's almost dead, and that one push, so much damage coming out there. Ambition just on the bot side, waiting, trading with Alex, taking a bit more damage. And for now, JT's still in control. They don't have Baron for too much longer. In fact, I think it is just Alex with it now, with the extended duration on Masteries.
We'll start to time away. Rumble still trying to buy time with the Renekton in mid laners. Yep, the Trunks are there.
Crowd still hurts. This just in.
And that's with a late death cap. It's probably going to be 6th item death cap coming in from Crown, who's had to thrift shop his way towards a 5-item build. So hasn't been able to really make too much of this game, although the CS value is obviously very comfortable across the board.
That's true. They have still been farming up a storm. Well, has 404 at 38 minutes. Definitely more than respectable. Mid lane has been defended, pushed out, and JT now have to go back to the drawing board. It's okay, we've made this push happen, we've pushed the top lane, pushed the bottom lane, but now we have no Baron. So what does the next couple minutes look like for us?
I mean, playing around Ocean Drake at 38 minutes is usually a losing strategy, but Baron is still to be spawned in a long time. It's a sort of situation where normally at 38 minutes, you would invest everything in vision around Baron rather than an Ocean Drake, but so long now that it's going to be a freebie. Does mean the Elder Dragon, another place where we might see a big fight, is very disconnected. It's going to be, what, 30, almost 45 minutes in the game. It will be spawning. Given that it will be disconnected from the Baron buff spawn, expect people to be playing exclusively topside until maybe there'll be a flare point as the Elder Dragon spawns.
Now, it will take a long, long time for that to be a thing. Baron will be coming up before that one, so could be, again, another point of contention. I feel like now, though it is difficult to say that Samsung will make the same mistake again, but I mean, it was multiple times we saw members walking into Fog of War and JT getting the pick, or them being proactive and using the Fate's Call. So I'm just interested to see what else JT has in the tank.
And look, Samsung do have the Banshee Veils that make it a little bit more healthy. As long as Ruler doesn't go on a solo invade mission like he did on the second round, they have more people other than Core JJ and Ambition that can walk forward. But honestly, the game plan here from Samsung is just put down control wards as advanced as you feel like you can defend and just keep yourselves competitive in vision around Baron. They'll never get vision control unless they win a fight, and then we're so late that that's not a big factor. But it's all about getting as advanced control wards as possible and then resetting the Baron dance, which really should decide the game in the next 2 to 3 minutes.
I just feel like that is the case, whereas Morning is coming in bottom side, looking for that potential flank there.
Kuve walking up as well.
I think he's just been spotted, didn't have vision of the Renekton as he walks by and picks up Rush. Ambition waiting around the side, trying to tag out with that Prey Seeker. And if that all starts off with Ruler jumping in there with the ultimate, but the Chains of Corruption will not keep Fofo down. He'll jump away with the Valkyrie. One ultimate down from Samsung.
QSS for the Chains of Corruption is an advantageous cooldown for Ruler, but obviously a very small factor in this game. Continue to get blue buffs. They continue to be team fight ready. The Vision game is really where things are being fought for on the side of J-Team. They've largely been respectful until now.
Call signals the start of the fight, but the winner's bite, unfortunately, hits a Banshee's Veil.
Yeah, the target selection there wasn't Ruler without Flash or anything like that. It was onto the Rumble, and that means that cooldown is largely wasted. They didn't invest the Glacial Fissure as well. Understood that that wasn't going to be a possibility. Fate's Call is a very short cooldown. That should still be up the moment the Baron starts to be contested. It's spawned right now.
And really, that would have just been the cherry on the top of the cake there for JT. If they got to pick themselves and move on to the Baron, suddenly they have the pressure in this objective, fantastic. But even if it doesn't, they can go for the next one. Morning is pushing up in this bottom lane. Both top laners have their TP, so they'll most likely stay around here as long as they can. Or who they might head over to his team with, just looking at where he's kind of needs to make up his mind right now, but he is going towards his team.
And he wants to be in position. The 4.5 second teleport timer is too long at this point. 41 minutes into the game where a clean wipe will be enough to answer the game. So Rumble does group. Means the minion waves aren't as in a great spot as they were earlier in the game. This time Samsung have the inside track on Baron. Still don't think they'll start it though. So for now, just trying to cement vision in the area and then reset to mid lane.
Samsung a little bit split right now, but a good chunk onto Fofo. Lots of poke damage coming out here. Core JJ eats up Ambition, throws him back to his team. Small window here for JT, but they haven't pulled the trigger just yet. Morning sitting on that front line, Crown coming in from the flank as well. Big damage onto Alex. Small bits of poke, and it does seem like it's coming to a breaking point very shortly here, Papa.
Chain of Corruption was already used earlier, so waiting on that cooldown or something. They don't have any other force, and J-Team aren't priced in until they see Ruler overextended. Well, JJ this time is very close, though.
Ruler on the front lines gives me a great deal of anxiety, but he's just poking away at BB and Jay.
Almost feels like they're buying time for cooldowns to come back, but J-Team, this time they don't have control around Baron. Samsung are just going to disengage and kite back to the Baron area. For now, it feels like, well, J-Team don't trust them to start it, but at least the leash happens by Samsung.
They hit it a little bit. Again, it's just constant poke damage.
Both teams need a commitment. Both teams need one of their line CCs to hit. But given that knowledge, no one is fully committing here. So the poke war is pretty even across the board, although Alex, lowest HP value on his side.
And overall, Fofo will start to mount up on the damage. You can see it's already coming out there. He's burnt his rockets. Big wave in the top lane and bot lane here, Papa.
That's actually the biggest notable thing is that Samsung, when everything stays a draw in terms of pressure, are winning because of minion pressure. So they're happy to keep J-Team occupied, and J-Team are not riding a minion wave in the mid lane into the inner turret, and thus things are going well for Samsung across the map.
Wave down, JT back to base, it looks like, from Alex, who did get poked out from Ruler, so he's going back. Bottom lane's also going to crash, and Samsung take control by essentially just keeping JT there and playing the waiting game.
They played chicken, and they played chicken the longest with the lanes pushing in their advantage in top. So that's why they start the Baron. Renekton, he's not there.
He's still recording. He might just go back to base. Yeah, this is pretty much gone. Equalizer comes down, and Jay and BB rather just see this is happening. To flash the ultimate coming in from Jay.
Yeah,
this is a big committal. Corki's now coming back into this one. Does have the package as well. Will he pull the trigger? Looks like that's a resounding no on that one as Jay lets them leave. And that will just be the Baron over to Samsung.
And Samsung were playing chess while J-Team were playing checkers. They felt like if they pulled it long enough, they would get the supremacy of the minions. They saw Renekton on the map dealing with what was 3 or 4 minion waves pushing in. They knew that they didn't have wards there because remember, they've been defending control wards and kiting upwards as after minion wave was cleared by both sides. Because J-Team never forced them to take the long route to defending the inner turret, they could play around Baron. And that's why the first opportunity, they take their first Baron of the game. That was a really long, drawn-out scenario with very little bloodshed, but now the blood might be shed very shortly.
BB getting chased down here, needs to stay behind Jay, but wait for that one to come down with the Unbreakable, and Fofo getting blasted! Meanwhile, Ambition looks to confirm this kill, though doesn't get any stacks down, so Redemption will heal a little bit. They'll go back to base, but mid lane now being sieged in from Samsung.
And we'll take the turret here. No one's in position to defend it. Bebe and Fofo gave up their health bars, poking around the sides. Samsung pick up the Baron buff. They know exactly what to do with it. They kite away, and another team fight goes to Samsung. Game should be over.
And the way that they won that was essentially just, as you said, playing the game of chicken, keeping JT there. JT, every single time they came back in, it was via making the play, jumping in, initiating. It just didn't happen in that scenario, and now Samsung battering down the bottom lane.
And what people need to take away is it wasn't an even game of chicken. If it was about the first smile, they were pinching themselves because they knew they had the minion waves pushing and that eventually it would go their way. So J-Team should have been able to look at the minimap and realize we have to ride this minion wave or we will just lose. Now they might look for an emergency fight.
Morning coming in from the top side. We'll have to slice and dice away. Ambition chasing after. Doesn't look like he's too committed on this one's ruler. Front lines once again, but we'll back away.
Yeah, maybe there's enough ability power on the shield to allow Ruler to frontline situationally. No flash up on Jay, they know that information. Alex also, so in relative safety of Samsung, they want to pad their stats with an Elder Dragon as well.
This maybe opens up an opportunity for JT to come back into this.
Waiting for the Fate's call.
Dropping low, shockwave used, doesn't have a big impact. Down comes the Equalizer,
zoning
them away. Alex once again range, but he's taken down from the Equalizer, and it will be smited away by Ambition. They turn towards the crab, and they will go back to base. Big wave in the top lane that needs to be addressed. And JT, again, just lose another massive objective, unable to contest.
Exactly, and that's the key takeaway is the fact that they were not allowed to contest the Baron because of the minion waves, and this time just using both cooldowns to just force a battle line to be drawn. The Equalizer was really line saying, come in here, you're going to take too much damage, you won't be able to contest, you'll die. For the Elder Dragon buff, they get both of them, they stack objectives, they're going to try to ride in the top lane minion wave, it looks like. And Samsung looking for what feels like a PvE victory because amount of teamfight in this game has been preciously low. Only 13 kills in 47 minutes.
Yeah, very stark contrast to what I'm expecting to see out of the Chinese squads here, Papa.
If MVP versus OMG has 13 kills at 47 minutes, that's just not a
Something's
reality I
gone
want to
wrong.
live in, Pulse.
Yep. Don't want that one, but Samsung, I mean, it's pretty much, if they were going to win this game, it would be in this fashion, and JT have never really put Samsung in a lose-lose situation, though multiple times when contesting these objectives, Samsung were putting JT in that lose-lose, where no matter what they did, they weren't going to come out with something good.
But it's not a playstyle that would work traditionally in the LCK. We'd see comps like this that J-Team has run. I mean, the punishments were good twice from J-Team, but Samsung are not playing a long game victory in terms of regular LCK performance. They may win this game, but it doesn't inspire confidence for the future.
Perhaps a catch on Ambition. He tries to jump away. The flash comes
really
in
want
from
him.
Jay as well. Pops the ultimate, but this is the tank who will pretty much use all our cooldowns. Unfortunately, the bronze has been gobbled up, and Spat Out instantly dies. He was meant to be the tank, but he is no longer, as Morning will be the new front line. He does have that GA, but it's a 4 versus 5 now. Bottom lane being pushed in. Mid tower is already destroyed. Super minions are on their way.
As you say, base broken in 2 different spots. Second inhibitor will go down. They didn't even have to invest their big cooldowns, only Chains of Corruption, and also the ultimate, the Abyssal Voyage. Bofo taken low. They don't have to really respect any initiation with Braum dead and the Fates call down. Samsung get what they wanted, they leave.
They'll do it again.
Exactly,
They'll come back.
It is that rinse-repeat strategy here because now they really no longer feel pressure. I thought after the first turnaround with the 2 kills on the failed dive on the inner turret, that would be Samsung playing this style and sticking the landing then. Then they made another big mistake. The second Baron went through, and you started to wonder, maybe Samsung are just down and out of form. But now, finally, they've corrected themselves. The minion wave play has been very good. That's the 3rd inhibitor turret down. And it seems like the Alamo for JT is going to be their base.
Forwards, and Ruler's going very deep right now, but he has the safety of Core J there to save him. BB cutting backwards, but gets annihilated by Ruler once more. Kuve goes into the zone,
so
jumps
low.
away. One of those shields takes him back to half. BB being down, Samsung are almost certainly going to take the top inhib now. Again, another potential catch onto a tank, but the top priority just isn't there right now from JT.
So many super minions, 2 waves of super minions pushing in. Bofo's still alive, so all's not lost, but Kuve can just teleport back in.
And that's pretty much going to be the final nail in this coffin. Drawing the line in the sand from Fofo, but I'm not sure if it's going to be enough on this one. Ruler just doesn't even care about the champions. He's moved on to the Nexus towers. Pushing down these minion waves once more. Samsung looking for the final push.
Samsung, can they close it on this minion wave? That's 1 Nexus turret down. Trying to keep formation. Those rockets, they certainly do hurt.
And pushing every single wave in here, Papa. They're playing it safe. They're playing it methodical. Morning tries to get this pick here, but
Still
again,
lives.
Core
Core
JJ.
JJ.
Tam Kench, hell of a champion. And now Morning going to be dropped shortly into his Guardian Angel. Does survive miraculously. Go back to base. Inhib respawns and sure to go back down once again as Samsung are right on the front door. They go back to base. They're going to play this slow. 50 minutes on the clock. Baron spawning soon, but they just want the win.
I mean, Core JJ's Medivac play in this particular game has been on point, so often devouring right at the last second. You could argue maybe too judicious in the usage when Ruler died and gave them up the second Baron, but other than that, has been super on point, has not died. Only person on Samsung to not die. It's usually the focal point when you play a Tahm Kench comp, is just killing the Tahm Kench to prevent the frustration, whereas this opposite number in terms of not dying is Fofo, who alone has lived up to a lot of the plaudits and the hype that we had around Fofo. But a Corki can only do so much, really does rely on his tank line, and it hasn't been a reliable display there around him.
And regardless of the result of this game, Fofo can come out with his head held high as another Baron goes down over the Samsung. We've had quite a number of Barons this game, Papa, but hopefully this one will be the last for Samsung, as they should be able to find the game here. Double super minion waves in every single lane. And it does seem like it will be the final push, unless Fofo can pull something miraculous out of the bag. I don't really see it happening. It's not the pure damage build that might be turning up the big numbers.
Also, I mean, Samsung aren't going to be focusing on kills. They just want to focus on killing the last Nexus turret.
Exactly.
And taking down the game, so they don't even have to win. A straight up team fight. Waiting for those grouped up minion waves. Here's, I guess you could call it one minion wave.
Yeah, the sixth member, the minions coming in here. Morning getting chunked down as well by Ruler. Jay coming in from around the side, the flash, the fissure as well, but he's on the front lines, gets dragged in by BB, saving him. Again, Tahm
distracted.
Kench.
They want to finish it. There's the next turret.
Shockwave doesn't hit anything. Sombrero on the floor. Ambition backing up, goes down as well. Fofo finds that kill. Morning turning around onto Rule as well. He jumps away. Fofo still alive somehow. BB turning it around. But Kuve, the damage out from Ruler, the mid lane as well. And everyone has to back away. Nexus goes down. Samsung take the win.
Samsung could finally play front-to-back League of Legends for the first time this whole game, often having to deal with pushing lanes and other queries. They get their second Baron. The Baron usage from Samsung very clearly on a different level to what J-Team could manage. They take the victory, but the path there was long and winding. And if you're going to talk about honorable losses, it's a pretty damn honorable loss for J-Team and the LMS.
100%. They can come out of this one feeling pretty good about themselves. But in the end, the Korean lineup, Samsung do manage to take it. It feels like around that mid-game, the switch was flipped. They were like, okay, now is the time to win this game. Let's slow it down for 30 minutes. And once they did, just meant everything went their way from that point on.
I mean, one of the quirks of this tournament is that Samsung's second game in the group stage is the third game of the day. It's in 2 games' time. So we will see the summation of Samsung's tournament if they do make, if the LCK, as expected, do make Sunday today, you know, very, very soon. So how they bounce back from, if we rewind a little bit, the series lost to Jin Air and then a fairly unconvincing victory against J-Team will be very interesting to track, because sure, they pick up the victory, but it was kind of Samsung pull it to late game mode, which that was spring 2016 when Samsung was like this. Certainly wasn't spring season 2017 when Haru was trying to explode games. So I don't know what you guys took away, but Samsung, they didn't come in world beaters from that performance.
Yeah, I'm on the very same train of you. I mean, ultimately, both teams, I think, can feel pretty good about this one, J-Team in particular, but this was not the type of dominating performance that I expected out of Samsung.
Yeah, I mean, the one beneficiary, as you mentioned, going into the cast was Fofo. He was a madman. He going into this one, Fofo, we had expectations. We were a bit timid. How is he going to perform up against a Crown? And he blasted him out of the water.
And that's,
I'm going to hesitate on blasting.
Okay.
There was definitely some high points for Fofo.
I mean, he technically got a solo kill, so...
Well, he was also technically getting blasted in the early lane phase that forced him to use his teleport.
We don't talk about that.
And let's first and foremost talk about Corki as a pick, because we're starting to see Corki really emerge in the LPL in particular. I'm glad to see him stick tight in 7-12 over in the LMS region. And I just love Corki right now. I love the fact that he has super strong mid-game power spikes. A lot of his lane matchups are okay. You know, he can itemize in the Hex Drinker you're talking about on Cask.
Yeah.
And then his late game scaling. Like, how many times do you get a mid lane champion who's like great at mid game and then hyper good at late game scaling? I think Orianna really is the only one that fits directly in there.
anyone who can have lane pressure, push against most opponents, or have pressure on most opponents with first the range auto attacks and the rocket spam, and from there has turret pressure solo as well, can play side lane, kind of a rich man's Talia in some way if you think about it, because he has much more turret pressure in the side lane than a Talia does. So, but given how much he can do, as a pick, I think he's underplayed, if anything. I think he should be very close to pick ban status.
Yeah, definitely. I would say even in really, really tough matchups like Syndra, for instance.
Sure.
We already talked about Hex Drinker, but just being able to get out of every phase of the game scot-free makes it very much fitting for Fofo.
It does, and I want to go back to the point that he did get that solo kill, and I believe we do have a replay to illustrate that fact, the fact that he was able to find this, but Crown obviously no way to fight that.
And Crown really shouldn't have been there,
No.
and this isn't the first time that kind of Crown's hubris or his greed gets the better of him. He's caught out in the blue buff, but there's also multiple times where the shockwave isn't coming in mid and late game because Crown is off to a side cleaning up some of those creep waves as opposed to being pulled together with his team.
I mean, Crown was our regular season MVP in spring, and you talk about hubris, he has felt that in summer season because they haven't played around him. When Haru was there, it was often the Haru and Crown show, invading with Haru, a very aggressive-minded jungler. Ambition is not that same aggressive-minded jungler. He's had to be more of a bit part play. He hasn't been the main calling card of the team, and it feels like he's like, well, I just need this blue buff to carry. Doesn't respect where the team is at. Could have just, as we mentioned on cast, walked over and taken the enemy blue buff with his team, but he's like, I'll get the blue buff and clear and not have to be involved. And that hubris is getting to him. Sure, he's still a fantastic player, but it's an extension of what is kind of a worrying trend for specifically Samsung.
Can
is
be
that
exploited.
This man who they thought that he could kind of be on an island and do fine is still feeling that need to carry and thus making these silly mistakes.
And you already said Greed. That was a moment where he needed to understand his role in the setting in which there were towers being taken, either defend mid because that was being attacked by Fofo, or in the bottom lane. But he just tried to take the blue buff because he must have realized that was going to be taken in the meantime because that pressure was gone. But that's definitely a risky play.
It's a new query on Crown is that Faker, the best player of all time, is one of the best at saying, well, I'm on Lulu now, I'm going to do Lulu things, bangs the carry. And Crown now has to find himself in a scenario where he does need to temper himself a little bit in scenarios where he can take a step back, trust his teammates. I think he'll get there by Worlds, but this is like a half-split story for Crown that needs to be addressed.
But we'll get to see another chance for Crown to maybe redeem himself later on into the day. But to bring it back to this game right here, there was a lot of plot twists in that game. It definitely went back and forth because around the mid-game where there was just a fight that really turned the tempo back around.
This is the problem for me when it comes to J-Team because they had the execution proper, or at least pushing into the jungle, have Corki topside. The reason they get caught here is because they thought they got a pick on Tom Kench, and they divided themselves. They pushed way too far deep into enemy territory. If they had played it patient, it would have been better for them.
Yeah, and this is just the glaring weakness of J-Team. We kind of called attention to the fact that their mid-game fumbles a little bit, and it's in that mid-game setup and execution, which is something that Samsung were so much better at, as demonstrated by that team fight. But just the vision line. Core JJ, you talked about his control wards, how they were setting up the creep waves before moving into objectives. It was just so much crisper and cleaner, which allowed Samsung the ability to stall this one out and take it with confidence.
Yeah, and that damage graph definitely just told the story there, of especially J-Team, Raz.
Yeah, that's the big point. Because from that point forward, sure, J-Team's able to sneak the Baron from that one, but then Samsung plays a much slower and understanding game about what's happening on the map. You saw a lot of you already mentioned it, low kill game, because they were able to stall it out in the mid lane, recognizing that their side waves are in order. And J-Team definitely fumbled certain situations, not understanding where the side waves being, where to put the Corki, especially with teleport. So it just felt like J-Team, once they got to that portion of the game, really were in a bit of a questioning area.
And I actually have a question here. Do you think that Samsung were maybe playing with a bit of arrogance the later this game went? Because, I mean, it did take them a long time to close out that game, and it was clear that they slowed it down. It was definitely a moment around that mid-game. It was like, okay, we're going to win this, but it's going to take a while.
I mean, we talked about, Crown's kind of his arrogance and trying to make that blue buff play. Again, he wasn't necessarily with his team all the time setting up those waves, but it's just like against a composition that has more hard engage on it. The only hard engage that J-Team really had there is either they flank someone with a package, they flank someone with Renekton, or they find the Yo-Yo Kalista Braum. If you're against the likes of an Ashe, the likes of a Varus, more hard CC, they can definitely get punished thinking that this is fine. We'll trade farm, we're better players, we can outplay them.
And you use the term fallback, and the fallback fundamentals of Samsung for the last 2 years have been outstanding. They are great at saying, well, we screwed up early, let's just pull it to the late game, we trust ourselves, our vision game is good. My issue here, and it's a bigger point than just this one game, is they needed extensive fallback fundamentals against J-Team to win a game. That's for a team shooting for World Finals against opposition, or the third place team, I guess second place currently in LMS, is already a query on Samsung's strength. We are trying to take storylines larger than just this tournament from a game like this, and for them to kind of have to go into emergency mode was a big problem for Samsung.
And while he did go for a lot of solo expeditions, it worked out in the end. 3-2 and 6 on his total scoreline. Ambition will take the key player of this game.
And one of the things about this is that I actually really loved how Cuve played, because he outright won the matchup.
I'm shocked he didn't get the key player there.
Exactly, because he outright won won the matchup, and then
Picks
once he got
into a losing matchup.
Exactly. 46 minutes into the game, his equalizers were perfect.
Yep.
He was able to cut the team off. So even though, sure, Ambition, like, congratulations, he got the MVP on that one. But Kuve played fantastically.
I mean, one thing that you can say about Ambition was his mid-game control and the fact that the reason why Samsung didn't just get blown out with J-Team's lead over that 14-minute kind of rotation fiasco was because Ambition was playing such great red zone defense, you know, constantly checking that Baron, constantly teaming up with Core JJ, and making sure that the team was covered.
Staying burrowed, so we had Tremor Sense to add to some control wards and not give away a Baron.
There you go.
Good
And he
job.
also said,
Great,
Rek'Sai.
great mechanics, baby.
That's all you need.
And he also said,
Yeah.
my life for Iron sacrificed himself and his other teammates maybe got a call a couple times. So, yeah, there's that as well. But I definitely agree. Kuve was a large part of that win. And it was big question marks around his champion state. It's like, wow, Rumble into Morning right here with Renekton. And then it was the questions of, is there a big player disparity between them? But still, they both held on. But Kuve, big like equalizes in the end.
Yeah, in all honesty, if that's Cuve's like one of his first Rumble performances, I'm terrified for the rest of the tournament because he looked phenomenal on that champion. His equalizer cutting off that Elder Dragon, pretty much giving them the free objective, it doesn't get better than that.
Let's say he's leveled up. He's got the confidence from the other champions, and his Rumble, like you say, Ixu was the same story.
He's now
on
like a
Jin Air.
Charizard.
He's getting there. He's getting there on Rumble, and I thought after the Rumble changes, these kind of secondary or third or tertiary Rumble players would just focus on other champions after the nerfs, but they learned here that if they are put in a position where Rumble is the right pick, Cuve can deliver, and with, you know, still the better part of a second round robin to go, that's something for Samsung to work with.
Yeah, and adjacent to him, of course, is Morning, who honestly, even though the rest of J-Team looked very well, Morning did not. I think Morning played poorly in the lane, built poorly because he went for a defensive itemization.
Spectre's Cowl.
Exactly. I don't understand what's happening there. And another point, too, is that honestly, mid-game, late-game, the team's ability to win out just came off of his TPs. A lot of the times he was just pushed in the side wave, and he was never able to really impact these team fights, which is really worrying. So if J-Team, if they want to be able to patch up that nonsense, if they want to make it a little better, of course, once they actually push into the red side jungle, once they get Baron control, because their early game leads, you can't really question that. It's this, how do they push it forward, and the TPs seem to be the most crucial point.
Yeah, exactly. Last point, Pavel.
No, I mean, honestly, I agree with you. I think if you're going to see that Rumble is taken into Renekton, you're on the front foot. Doran's Blade could have been a start, or Carl, Tiamat, Black Cleaver, just try and blast him early to justify kind of disrespectful choice of taking Rumble into the Renekton. Didn't choose to do that, and then in the end of it, just kind of was a non-factor in the
Sure,
game.
and that's going to do it for game one. So we're going to take a quick